Greetings, gente puente! Like I said in yesterday's video, I'm going to be sharing with you over the next few days as we lead up to the 1 year anniversary of the podcast that I host called Gente Puente. And I'm sharing with you tips and strategies about how you can be gente puente in your ministry or your parish or your diocese. That is how you can build bridges to unite the body of Christ. Yesterday's video focused on the very first steps of encountering someone from a different culture. But today we're going to dive deeper into working together. How do we work together as leaders from different cultures? First of all, thank you for your feedback on yesterday's video and for those who commented. And I hope more of you will jump over and comment below that video about what your experiences have been like to encounter people of other cultures. Have they been difficult? Have they been funny? Can you share some story with us? We would love to hear it. I also want to say that during this year of getting to know many of you through the interviews and the Facebook group, it's been a privilege to shine a light on what Gente Puente are doing around the country. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, I would love to interview you. You do not have to be an expert. Like I said yesterday, I don't feel like an expert either. And I just feel like God has given me certain experiences and He wants me to share them with other people. So if you've had something that's worked really well in your ministry, in the parish or the diocese, I want to interview you and hear about it and share it with other people. You can also share resources in the Gente Puente Facebook group. If you want to learn about being a guest, go to pattycc.com/gentepuente, or if you want to join our Facebook group, go to facebook.com/groups/gentepuente. Now let's dive into the topic of today. So in my ebook about Hispanic culture and ministry and how it affects things in ministry and how it affected my ministry, I kind of give some examples. I address a common pain point for multicultural parishes and dioceses, which is how do we have meetings together and help them go well when we have leaders from different cultures? One challenge, of course, is language. And that's not really going to be our focus today, but I just want to say I've seen a lot of creative solutions to deal with the language gap. Some as simple as just making sure there are bilingual people sitting next to the people who are not bilingual so they can help them follow along and know what's going on in the meeting and what people are sharing. I saw a group who had people bring their cell phones and some earbuds, and then they would connect to the person who would be simultaneously interpreting on their phone, and they could hear what was going on without actually interrupting the speaker. So I thought that was pretty cool. As people become more and more bilingual, of course, bridge building will become easier. But like the people in the Facebook group confirmed the other day on a poll, language skills are important, but even more important are the cultural skills, being able to know how to speak and interact with people in a way that respects their culture and understands their culture. So that's what we're going to focus on today. I cannot, of course, go too deep into the idea because it's a huge topic, culture, but I want to give you just a few tips to help meetings go more smoothly. And if you and the leadership can all go through the study or attend a workshop on the USCCB's Building Intercultural Competence for Ministers, or BICM, I highly recommend it. You can read a blog series that I wrote about BICM for the To Go Forth blog. It's for the Justice, Peace, and Human Development Office of the USCCB. And one of those blog posts specifically focuses in on meetings. I'll make sure to link it in the description of the video below. Like I said yesterday, I focus on the interaction between the prevailing culture here in the U.S. and Hispanic immigrants, just because that's who I have experience working with. But you can apply these concepts to really a lot of situations and many cultures. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are the differences between a culture that tends more towards the individualistic side and the collective side. So this is one of the cultural dimensions that I discuss in the ebook. If you want to dive more into that, you can download the ebook for free. But in general, people from the U.S. prevailing culture tend towards the more individualistic side of the spectrum. Now, like I say in the ebook, when you talk about anyone's culture, it's kind of like an iceberg. Even if we have a certain skin color or we're from a certain area and you can see that, below the surface, there's a whole lot of things that go into making my culture. Where I was raised, how my family raised me, whether I was a minority or majority culture, whether the culture was discriminated against or not, and I learned to adapt to the majority culture, whether I was raised in the city or the country. And so all of those things go into how my culture is. But in general, Hispanic cultures tend towards the more collective side of that spectrum. So, what does that mean? That means that Hispanics value, in general, relationships and harmony above everything else, including effectiveness, progress, time. And so, for someone like me who was raised in the prevailing culture, who it's like, time is money, let's go forward, we need to make progress, get through the agenda, this can be very difficult, frustrating, clashing of cultures. I can remember so many times. So the parish I worked in, we lived just down the street. And so people knew where we lived. They came by all hours of the day and night if they needed something like, oh, can you read this paper? Or I need this filled out, or what does this say? And so they would come in, they would knock on the door, and of course we would say, come on in and sit down. But at the same time, I'm like trying to feed my kids dinner, or it's pajama time and I need to get them to bed. And so my very like prevailing culture US side is like, come on, tell me what you need. I want to help you, but you just got to tell me. But the Hispanics that would be arriving were very much on the collective side of this spectrum, and they would say, how are you? And they'd ask about my family, they'd ask about my work, about my husband, what's going on. They'd tell me about their lives, and inside I'm like, just tell me what you need. But what were they doing? They were making sure there was harmony and our relationship was solid, and that was much more important than whatever task they happened to come for in that moment. So how does this apply to meetings? If you have a prevailing culture as your dominant culture in your parish meeting, people are going to be saying, follow the agenda, start on time, end on time, right? We here in the United States have that as part of our culture. Well, if you have a collective culture that you want to make feel welcome and participate in these meetings, let's say a parish council is a good example. You're trying to integrate more people into the parish council from diverse cultures. Then I would say, first of all, find a way for those people to interact outside of that meeting time, before the meeting. Ways to meet each other's families, ways to interact as just human beings and get to know each other's families or where they're from, and ask questions about those things. Your hometown, tell me about it. Tell me about your family. Why? Because the people who are from a collective culture, they are identifying as the cultural group much more than as an individual. They are identifying themselves. Their identity is tied to their culture group. Okay? So then on the actual meeting day, it's always helpful that there's a time, an informal time before the meeting actually starts, where people can interact and reestablish that harmony and relationship. Food always helps, so some kind of, even just a snack, something where people can stand around and kind of get to know each other better and reestablish that harmony before the meeting starts. Another dynamic that I see affecting a lot of meetings is the dynamic of whether a culture emphasizes or values more a hierarchy or equality. So here in the prevailing culture in the United States, the equality of the individual is valued over where they are in a hierarchy, or the value of a hierarchy. So when you're at a meeting, for example, it's just assumed that if you're in the meeting, it's because we've asked you to come, we want to hear your voice, you have an equal voice, everyone should be heard. If we're talking about something, a dialogue is opened, and you have something to say, you're just supposed to jump in and say it. And if you're silent, we take that as a sign that you agree with what's being said. Whereas in a collective culture, the way dialogues happen is very different. There may be a situation where the elder or the authority figure is expected to speak first and give their opinion. And then everyone else who is maybe lower in that hierarchy, it would be disrespectful for them to actually directly contradict what that person said. So sometimes they may feel differently, but they will first honor what that person, the elder or authority, said, and then maybe very subtly describe a way that they feel differently. But they would not just directly say, I disagree with that. So I remember so many times in ministry that someone would tell me, yes, I'll be there. See you tomorrow. But I never realized that in their eyes, I was the authority figure in the conversation. And it would have been much more disrespectful to directly say no to me than to just not show up to something that they committed to. But for me, as someone raised in the prevailing culture, that was like, man, your word is your bond. You lied to me. How dare you? That was very disrespectful, right? So you can see how that cultural clash can easily cause a lot of problems. But as I understood more and more of the culture and the situation of the hierarchy that people perceived in our conversations, I could pay more attention to the very subtle nonverbal cues happening in the conversation. And I could ask more questions and understand the situation better and read between the lines. And eventually I could kind of tell how strongly of a yes I was getting and know whether the person was likely to show up to this thing or not. So when we're talking about in a meeting, there are different situations or suggestions, like for example, in the Bickham material, different strategies of inviting the elder or the authority figure to speak first, and then to have some kind of mutual invitation so everyone's voices are heard and people feel that they are given a place to speak, because they may assume since I'm not the authority in the room, I'm not supposed to speak, and they might be silent not because they agree but because they haven't been invited to speak specifically. Okay, so I suggest, or I think meetings go a lot better if there's communication ahead of time and kind of everyone gets on the same page. First of all, learning what each other's cultural tendencies are and then becoming aware of them, but then agreeing on some strategies to make things go more smoothly. Like we're going to have a social time ahead of time, but then we're going to start on time and end on time. We're going to invite elders to speak, but then we want all of you to speak. We're going to invite each other to speak, and we care what you say. So if you have something to say, we want to hear it. And then how do we actively listen and catch those subtle cues that maybe a collective culture might be using to say their opinion? And then how will we make decisions as a group? Come to an agreement about that ahead of time. Collective culture would assume that whoever is the authority, like a pastor, for example, they're going to make the decision. But maybe in an equality system, we're assuming that we're going to have a vote. So coming to agreement ahead of time is a big help with that. I hope that you found this video helpful. I know we didn't go too far into the details, and I encourage you to, if you want to learn more, to check out the ebook. The link is below, or the blog series that I wrote about Bickham, or if you want to order Bickham from the USCCB, all those links will be in the show notes, in the notes below the video. I'm used to podcast world with show notes. I really hope that you'll share this with other Gente Puente who might be struggling with these issues in their meetings with diverse leaders. And there's more coming tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to share in Spanish some of the things from today and yesterday's video, speaking more to people who are Hispanic and maybe from that perspective, teaching about what the prevailing culture is like and how they can interact with us more effectively. And then the next day I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about something that I'm developing that's a pledge for Catholic leaders to pledge to be Gente Puente in their parish or their diocese, helping to unite the body of Christ, building bridges between people of different cultures or languages, or in other situations where bridges are needed. In the meantime, I would appreciate if you would comment below the video and tell us about some of the struggles that maybe you've had in meetings or in integrating leaders of different cultures, and maybe some solutions. If something's helped you, share about it below so we can all learn from that. And real quick, someone did ask me about the sizing of the t-shirts that are available on Amazon. I do feel like they run a little small. This is a women's large. And then the long sleeve that I was wearing yesterday was a men's large. So just so you know that. And if you're not already, be sure to sign up for the email alerts at gentepuente.com, or you can send the people that you work with that might be interested so that you or they don't miss the next video, and a few other surprises that are coming as part of our anniversary celebration. And I hope that you'll join me there. Thanks, and may God bless you and your ministry as Gente Puente.